Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy Saturday once again. So today we are going to be continuing our big project of updating elm-html-test to work for Elm 0.19. I'm assuming everyone who's tuning in heard about this through either my Twitter channel or the Elm discourse, or the Elm Slack, sorry. So, I'm assuming you all know a bit about Elm itself, and this project, elm-html-test, lets us test our views, which hasn't been upgraded to Elm 19 yet. So that's the project we're working on. I think this is part 6. We're into like hour 6 of working on this. So my estimation is we're about halfway done with this now. We've kind of worked through a bunch of the native code stuff and have gotten down to, I think, 25 test failures is where we left off. Let's check this out. But yeah, we'll be working on this today. Hopefully after another couple streams, this project should be finished, and then I want to get back to having more of a mix of kind of like introductory projects, some introductory projects rather than just focusing on this technical internal tool stuff. But I thought this would be interesting to work through with everyone. So hopefully y'all are enjoying this. And if there are things you're interested in seeing in the future, in future streams, let me know on Twitter or in the chat today. I am also going to be trying to branch out a bit from like not solely focusing on Elm projects on the stream, but I think that'll be the bulk of stuff for the moment. All right. Well, yeah, good to see a few of you in chat. Oh yeah, and I realized I didn't have the follower notifications up in my chat client before. So let's see, we've got Degorovcom. Thank you for following. That was just this morning. Okay, the rest of you from the past, I don't know if you're tuning in now, but if you are watching the video later or if you're here now, we've got Rasputin303, JRareGris, Dean Sky, Malaire. Oh, you're in the chat. Well, thank you for following. WebDev27, Doogie Johns, Jesse Skinner, Enenatum, Matthias Funk, GMSD4, Loose Air, Dylan Kearns, RT Feldman, and that's back 3 weeks. So thank you all for following. I didn't have the notifications up in the past, but glad to have you following the stream. All right, so let's get back into this. So we were working through, oh yeah, we also have our to-do list here. So we're still on step 2, get the test to pass. We have this set up using an npm script to run the tests. And according to our commit message, we are down to, whoops, I'm losing track of my tabs. Here we go. We are down to 25 test failures. And okay, great. Looks like that's still where we're at. Hey, Shari. Cheers from Germany. Well, welcome. I am here in San Francisco, so cheers from California. Are you a current Elm user? I'm always curious to hear a bit about from people in the chat. Okay. So, if you've been following the past couple streams on this, we have this tests.elm, which is listing all the tests. This set of them, the elm-html tests, are ones that we pulled in from elm-html-test. So a little more background, which you'll know if you've been following this project. elm-html-test was a separate package that Noah wrote, and in Elm-19, we're taking it and two of the other packages that elm-html-test itself depended on. We're taking all of those and incorporating them into the Elm Explorations test, which will be the main test package that everyone will use. So we're trying to combine this all into the single package. So these are the tests that we moved over from the elm-html-test package. We have worked through a bunch of these already. So let's find the name of this next failing test. View example model. Interesting. I think there's no describe. I'm guessing that comes from this test example one. Let's just comment this out and see if that fails. I kind of want to work through the rest before we get to the last example one. Let's see. Oh, you do Elm sometimes, small project, and oh, you're leading the Elm meetup in Leipzig. Cool. Yeah, I went to Germany briefly when I was in high school. I went there with an orchestra that I was in. We went around for a few weeks, met other kids that were in orchestra in Germany and stayed there. But I haven't been back since. Let's see. Okay, and then triggering events. That's gonna be a big one. Okay, so attributes was the first one we fixed. In last stream, we fixed queries, and I believe that also made descendants work. So let's see if there's any failures remaining in selectors. No, okay, great. I'm actually gonna move this one down. So these are all kind of in order. So events, we've got to deal with event handling. So we've seen a bit of the code. Maybe we should kind of take a look at what we did last time. In this previous commit, we basically have this internal types module, and there's a bunch of JSON decoders. So the way this all works is there's some native code that can turn virtual DOM values into JSON, into a JSON representation essentially. And then we write decoders here in the Elm code to turn that into this internal type, which also represents the virtual DOM in kind of a test-friendly way. And then that's what most of the elm-html-test library uses, is that internal representation. So the main bulk of what we've been fixing is, like here we had this type field in the JSON. It's now some other value, which is kind of depends on the internals of other things. So we had to figure out all of these new compiled field names for stuff in virtual DOM and use that in our decoders. So while we were doing that, let's see, looks like all those got updated. Okay, we found other things like here. This we didn't update because there weren't any failing tests, but we've made a note of some of the things that either weren't tested and we'll want to revisit before we finish. Or here's one like decode tagger. Taggers are used for turning the DOM events into messages. So I'm guessing that there's going to be a test failure related to this field name that's going to be covered by some of the event tests. So I've marked those also. So there's a bunch of to-dos in the code right now, and I'm expecting many of those will get addressed as we work through fixing the events test, which is what we are doing right now. So hopefully that background's useful. Maybe some of you have been following the other parts in this series up till now, so sorry for the redundancy, but hopefully that context is useful again. So We had 25 test failures overall. Looks like 19 of them are in the events tests. So let's hope, or let's guess, that the first test is one of the simplest ones. And let's focus just on this one and see if just this first test fails. Yes, okay. So let's start with this test. So returns message for click on an element. So we're taking some sample HTML, which I'm assuming is defined down here. Okay, this is pretty simple. There's a div with a class on it. There's a button that has an on-click that's supposed to produce sample message, and it's got some text. Great. So we take that sample HTML. If you're familiar with elm-html-test itself and have used it in Elm 18, you'll be familiar with this query stuff. We basically just turn this into the test-friendly version. Then we're going to search for the button element, or we're going to find all the button elements, grab the first one we find, then simulate. This is also part of the public API of elm-html-test. Let's go find the docs for that real quick. Event simulate. Okay, so simulate takes a tuple, which I happen to know is the event name, like the DOM event name, so it'll be like click for us in this case. And this is a value is a JSON object, which is essentially the event argument that your event handler in the JavaScript world would get. And we give it to some element that we found with elm-html-test, and it should give an event back. What is event? I believe event is its constructor is not exposed. So we'll get an event back. Ah, I see. And then we use event.expect to ensure that that event is producing a sample message. Okay. Sorry if that's a bit convoluted for anyone who's not familiar with elm-html-test, but I think let's try to discover why it's failing. Could be a lot of reasons. The most common reason we've run into so far is that the decoders weren't right, and it just couldn't. It was basically failing in the from HTML part because the decoders needed to be updated. Okay. From HTML, got this. It looks like that worked. Expect event. The event click does not exist on the found node. Okay. So that's a pretty deep, or that problem is pretty late in the sequence of events, which I guess is promising. It also means we're going to have to debug kind of some brand new code. Okay, and it looks like simulate doesn't actually do anything itself. It just saves all the values to be processed later. So I'm guessing this expect is where everything happens. Let's see. I'm also going to guess that it's this toResult that's failing. Okay, so toResult takes an event message. Oh no, that's backwards. Okay, so what does this do? We destructure the event so we know which event we're looking for. And we have the single. The single is just representing a single element from the virtual DOM that we've found previously. Actually, that's not entirely true. This query basically at this moment contains the entire document along with the information about how we want to search it. So that's something I haven't really gotten my head around yet. It seems kind of backwards in how this works. Basically, it seems like elm-html-test is building up instructions about what query it wants to run, but it doesn't execute anything until the final step in your test, which is, I don't know, seems kind of counterintuitive to me, but is not something I want to change in trying to upgrade the code. And there's actually probably a good reason for it that I just don't understand yet. So we're calling toResult. So it must be in here that it's running the query. Okay, so here's where it seems to actually execute the query. It looks for the node. Okay, if it finds a node that matched the query that we've built up, then it calls find event. Okay, so I'm gonna guess that this error message is probably coming from within find event. So this takes a string, a virtual DOM node, essentially, and it gives either an error or it gives us something that can decode a JSON value into a message. Okay, so this is the event name. For us, this will be click that it's looking for. Ah, great, here we go. The event click does not exist on the found node. So here's our node. So let's print out what our node is. Debug.log node. And see if that gives us any info. Okay, so here's our node. It's got children with the click me text, one descendant. It's got facts, attribute. There's no attribute namespace. There's bool attributes is an empty dictionary. Events is an empty dictionary. So that's the problem, I think. String attributes, styles, and that's the tag name. Okay. So this is all making sense to me. And I'm guessing that when we decode the JSON, like I was talking about earlier, we must not be properly decoding the events. In fact, we most certainly are not properly decoding them because we looked at that code earlier this week and have not fixed anything related to events. So I think I'm going to go back to the file that we worked on last time, the internal types, and see if there's anything about events in here. Decode events. Ah, okay. So here it's trying to decode events out of a field in the JSON, and if that doesn't work, it just always succeeds with an empty dictionary. So if we turn this off for a moment, I'm gonna bet that it fails in the decoder and might point us towards a better problem. Okay. Problem with the value at blah, blah, blah. Okay, last time we learned that E means children, or kids it's called now. D is facts. Okay, so it's trying to decode the facts. And this is probably all new stuff that we need to fix. So this is, let's kind of start from the top decoder. If it's a node type, then we go, oh, if it's text, we do text. Where's the normal node? Here's the normal node decoder. And here's the facts decoder. And we saw that this D field contains the facts. Okay. And facts contains events, decode events. Okay, so this is not in a subfield. And event decoder, it's past taggers. I'm not sure what that means. So let's look at decode events. And that's here where we are. Okay. So it looks like we have a click event here. Facts itself is this object. That's what I'm a little confused about, is that facts contains a field called A0. Based on what we've seen before, I was expecting just like a single letter thing without a number. So I want to try to understand the facts decoder a little bit. Let's see, where was that? Decode facts. So this decodes styles, decodes events. It looks for a namespace attribute, and then it decode others. So this namespace thing is the only one that has a field name specified here. What are these other things? I think the styles already works. Oh, I guess not. Okay. So I'm not sure if that's tested. Decode others. Grab things from attributes via decoder. Then anything that isn't filtered on the object. Okay, I don't know what that means. It calls decode attributes with the other decoder. I mean, we definitely have some tests already that have checked for attributes, but is this like an extra code path? Not really sure what this one's for. Okay. Well, I didn't really learn anything that I was hoping to learn about this, but event key, I would guess that event key is supposed to mean the click event. What is event key? Oh, I see. Right. Event key is this string named event. Okay. So it looks like this is A0 then. Interesting. Okay, and that's the one that we are missing from here, because we've got A1, A2, A3, A4. Okay, so these are all things that we've filled in previously. And I'm also going to put a to-do here. So we started making this record in this file that has all these internal constants. Oh, hey Arkham, welcome back to the stream. How are you doing? Okay, so that should at least fix this. If the stuff inside of here has the same structure as it used to, everything should work. I'm guessing it might, except it looks like these field names might be a problem. Let's see, have we mapped A to anything? A is supposed to be text. I guess we'll see if this gets anywhere further. Yeah, I'm pretty good. You've been on vacation for a few weeks? Nice. Let's see. Okay, this test failed because it cannot read property dollar of undefined. Okay, I am not sure where that's coming from, and why is this an exception? We must be back in native code somehow because we're getting a JavaScript exception. So these are all the native things. Oh, okay, event decoder is a JavaScript function. This doesn't refer to dollar anywhere though. Let's see if this is getting called. I'm assuming it is because we saw event decoder referred to in some of the code we were just looking at. Okay. So event is this whole thing, and decoder I don't see in here unless decoder is just the A field. Let's see. So maybe in a minute we can look in the virtual DOM source code and see if we can figure out where this is created and what the actual name of this field is, not the obfuscated name. But also I want to check the type. Like, what type is it? Does the Elm code think this is returning? So we saw event decoder here. So this gets passed in HTML context. So where is that defined? That's here. And event decoder was this function, it looks like. Yeah, okay. So we're past this function. So who calls this? Decode elm-html. Okay, so this gets past the tagged event decoder. This is a function that's created here. Okay, and here's the one that's our native wrapper. So this is supposed to be a function that takes an event handler and gives a JSON decoder back. Okay, however, we don't have any decoders, or excuse me, we don't have any functions in this event object. So this field can't be the decoder field because it's not a function. Looks like there's maybe a new union type in virtual DOM that replaces stuff it used to do with functions. So it looks like we're going to have to learn a bit more about the internals of the Elm virtual DOM library to figure out how to update this code. It looks like potentially event handlers in virtual DOM has possibly changed a lot in Elm 19. So I guess let's get to it. Elm virtual DOM. And I guess maybe we can start here. So on is a function. That's kind of the entry point to all this event stuff, I'm assuming. And this is going to take a string and a handler. I'm wondering if this handler might be what's stored on in this object. So I'm going to check handler and see if it's a union type that has a constructor called normal. If so, that's a lot of information already. Yeah, okay, that's looking promising. Type handler. Okay. Ah, fun. So there's a normal handler. I guess there's a whole bunch of docs here. Okay, this just describes about propagation, event stuff, passive event handlers will be created if you use normal or may stop propagation. In both cases, prevent defaults cannot be used, so we can enable optimizations. Okay. Some actions like uploading and downloading files are only allowed when the JavaScript event loop is running because of user input. Okay. I remember some Slack discussions about this stuff. We call update and send any port messages immediately, all within the same tick of the event loop. This makes it possible to handle user-instigated events in ports. Okay. So does that correspond to these other two cases? That's what's not clear. It's saying that normal and may stop propagation do not do this, but it doesn't explicitly say the others do. Normally the view is shown in the next request animation call. This allows us to save some work, but if stop propagation is used, we update the DOM immediately within the same tick. Okay, yeah, so all of this stuff is new in Elm 0.19. I'm not sure what the original change was, but I know all of this special stuff that it's noting about was handled so that, like it's saying, it'll allow certain events to be handled synchronously in the JavaScript in case some of the stuff you're calling from the JavaScript side needs to happen in the same event in the event loop tick as the DOM event that triggered it. So I think none of that should really matter for us. However, I'm thinking it might be worth looking at the Elm 0.18 virtual DOM code and see what it had here instead. Let's try that real quick. Let's see. Actually, that needs to be elm-lang virtual DOM. I guess that's actually going to be the same repository. We just need to find these. Okay, so these are the version numbers for the old elm.0.18 code. Virtual DOM. So this also had on. On would take an event name and a decoder. I see, and here it takes a handler instead, which will contain a decoder. And then it would call on with options, which would pass the string, the options, and the decoder. Got it, okay. And now on just takes a string and a handler, and the handler kind of, whoops, type handler contains a decoder, or okay, and this is the other change. So previously the options were just bools that were available up front, but in Elm-19 the handlers provide a decoder, so you can decode the event argument first to decide if you want to stop propagation or not, depending on the actual values in the event. Okay. Such a huge and complex task I've undertaken. Well, I think like one of the reasons I got interested in Elm in the first place was because, I mean, Elm's kind of complicated, but I think as a whole it's still much simpler than most languages or frameworks. Like, I had played around a bit with React and doing some side projects in React, and man, React itself was so complicated internally. Like, I was playing with it before Jest was around, which Jest is like the testing tool that's officially recommended for React now. And Jest wasn't around yet when I was starting to play with React, or it was like just a brand new thing. It wasn't officially sanctioned yet. So I was trying to write tests for my React app, and I was trying to like write a test framework that could let me do fast tests without trying to instantiate the entire document, basically. And it was really nasty because I don't know if this has changed, but at the time React had like a bunch of global stuff that it would store in a weird way, and it does all kinds of like extra wrapping of events and stuff like that. Anyway, I thought Elm was interesting because, like, even if you look at the compiler, yeah, it's definitely complicated, but it's not, it doesn't seem to be unnecessarily complicated. And I felt like, okay, it's small enough that if I needed to, I could dig into the code and understand it. So hopefully that'll be the case here. We will find out. But yeah, also I've kind of heard bits and pieces of the conversations that went on when these changes were being made in the first place, so I at least already had a vague idea of what types of changes we might be expecting. But yeah, fundamentally, I think these match up. It's like kind of an interesting refactor that happened. It looks like there's some more flexibility here in that the bool comes out of the decoder rather than being a parameter, an option parameter. So there's more flexibility to control when the bool is true and false. And then this is also just split out into 4 cases. Basically, it looks like so that it can do some optimizations. But fundamentally, this custom one is the most generic. It just has a decoder that can produce a message and 2 bools. And then this is the same. It's just a decoder that produces a message and one of the bools. And this is one message and the other bool. And this is just the message, and both the bools are assumed to be false. So essentially, like, we'll have to handle all these 3, but like fundamentally, this custom one is the only one that actually has unique purpose, and this essentially corresponds to what we had here. It's just that the options, which the options are just these 2 bools, the options are now inside of the decoder instead of outside. So we'll have to kind of understand the code a bit to see how it handles that, but fundamentally, the only thing that's happened is that the options are now moved inside of the decoder. So I guess we'll see. Hopefully that will not mean that we need to restructure how elm-html-test works, but I guess we'll find out. Yeah, so what I want to check out real quick is this native function on both sides. So in the new one, it gets a handler, and in the old one, it gets options and a decoder. All right, so native code, virtual DOM, function on, here we go. All right, and in elm-18, this is just returning an object with event key, which we've already been seeing, and then value. Okay, so let's see the elm-19 version of this. Yeah, okay, and this is essentially the same thing. We get the key and the handler. Here we got the key, which was called name, and options and decoder. This is that A0 that we already saw. And then key and value, are just the fields. And I'm realizing now that I was confused about something. So the key, what is the key? Dollar is A0. Here's the value we had. Oh no. Wait, what am I looking at? Where did we have the dollar A0 thing? That was here. And we changed the constants. Whoops. Okay, if we change this to something wrong for a minute, we'll get that decoding error that we saw about 10 minutes ago. Oh, I thought we would. All right, because we also had in the decoder, we turned this off temporarily. Whoops, not attributes. In decode events, we turned this off so that we'd get the decoding error. Okay, so here's our event object. A0 is, okay, that is not matching up with what I thought. Because this is having a dollar field whose value is A0. And this is something totally different. Okay, never mind. I am on the wrong track with that. So we'll put this back. We will put our constant back to A0. Okay, so here's what we do know. This right here is an elm value. This is how their elm values are represented in JavaScript. They've got their variant type is in the dollar field, so normal. So we know this represents a handler, and it's a normal type handler. And this then is going to be the decoder of message. So that's useful. The decoder then, oh, okay. So what we want is we'll need a switch statement here to basically handle the union type. Let's see. I guess I need to remember my JavaScript syntax. I have done too much Ruby lately. Switch. Okay, and then the case is the thing. Great. In Ruby, this is case, and the branches are when. All right, so we have switch. And what is VS Code trying to? There we go. Okay, switch key. So event dot a, like if event is this whole thing, then it should be event dot a dot dollar. And if it's normal, then we are going to return event.a.a. Not the most readable code, but otherwise we are going to throw new exception, unknown or unhandled. Let's say unknown, I guess, for when we're done. Throw unknown virtual DOM event type event.a.dollar. Okay, so this, however, is not going to be quite the right type, I don't think. Well, it worked for this case, but when we looked at the handlers, and let me open both of these windows. Elm virtual DOM. Yeah, okay. So in our normal case, we got a decoder of message. In these other cases, we are not, well, we could, I guess, just turn these into decoders of messages, but we'd be dropping this options information. So presumably, hopefully there's some tests about options. Maybe not. Huh, okay. We may be able to just ignore all the options for now. But I think I'd like to start moving things in the direction of making these options available to the internals of the code, even though, let's see, elm-html-test. Let's check the docs. I'm kind of surprised that information about the options isn't exposed to tests yet, but that could totally be possible. So here in event, we can simulate, expect, to results, event builders. Okay, I guess we don't actually expose the information. I wonder if there's issues about this. Stop propagation. Did I spell that right? Options. Here we go. I added this issue. Okay. In that case, I definitely want to start working towards making the options available. Okay. However, for what we're doing now, we don't actually need to worry about the options. So we could actually turn these decoders into decoders of message by just like running this decoder, then calling decode.map and just grabbing the first item out of the tuple. and we could do the same thing here. The best, yeah. You run into issues that you've created yourself and don't remember. Okay. We could also go the other direction, which I think is what I'm going to prefer. So, like we were saying earlier, this is the most generic branch, and these are all just kind of weaker versions or simpler versions. So I think we can like lift all of these up to be custom. So ultimately we want to get a decoder of this. Then the options will always be available no matter which of these. And we can always do this, right? Because in the normal case, the bools will just be false. And in this case, prevent default will always be false, and stop propagation will be this. So I think we want to do that direction of turning all of these decoders into this most custom decoder. And we don't really have test coverage for that now because there's no public API for checking the options in elm-html-test. But I think it's worth doing this anyway, and I don't think it should be that hard. Actually, it's going to be no less hard than converting all the decoders the other direction anyway. Let's see. Oh yeah, like when you search Google for a bug and you end up on a blog post of an answer you wrote years ago. Yes, exactly. Okay. So I think we're coming up close on an hour here. So let's do a little bit more and then we'll take a short break. So what I want to take a look at is where this decoder gets used. This function here returns a decoder. I'm actually kind of surprised that this that what we returned is the right type. I guess it's just supposed to be decoder of message, which in this case on, I see, was a decoder of message. If we, let's see, go back here. Yeah, okay. So that function returns a decoder of message. So that's good. But what I want to do is go in and change it to instead return a decoder of this this type, and then we can deal with stripping the stuff out that we don't need on the Elm side. Also, in talking through what we just talked about, I'm realizing there might not actually be any tests that trigger this case. So maybe we can add a test for having an event node that uses one of these other handlers. So let's do that first. So here's our events test. So we do it for normal elements, we do it for lazy, which we haven't run these others. We've only run this one first test yet so far. Mapped HTML, simple deep mapped, custom element, test, event result. Okay, and none of these use options. Okay, so let's do this. Let's do sample HTML with options. And I guess we can take bool. We can have these two bools be passed as options. Or I guess these could be handlers. Okay, I guess we should check the HTML docs in Elm-19. Make a new window, package, HTML, and options. How do we do on? Oh, okay. So in the HTML library, it looks like there's a slightly different API, and here's where it uses custom. Okay. Okay, and this is where it's basically describing all the different handlers. Got it. Okay. So I guess for the moment, I'm not really sure the best way to factor this. But let's just inline that sample HTML for the moment. Then we will convert it to query. We'll do this, and this should all work. Okay, so that test should work fine. Let me reformat this. Whoops. Not sure why the formatting isn't working in VS Code for some of the files. It works for a lot of the files. Okay, and it looks like there's a syntax error right now. There we go. Yeah, you should totally write more blog posts for your future self. Okay. So this should definitely pass. Returns message for stop propagation. And propagation. Event listener. Okay, so instead of on click, we're going to use on stop. What is it? Stop propagation on. Stop propagation on. That takes the string click, and it takes a decoder, which we are gonna decode.succeed of this, and true, I guess. Okay. JSON.decode.succeed. Let's just expose succeed because we're going to use this a lot, I think. I don't know, I don't normally like doing that, so I'm kind of on the fence about exposing that, but let's see what it looks like. Okay, reference error exception is not defined. Okay, apparently I don't know how to make to throw errors in JavaScript. Is it error? Yeah, great. Unknown virtual DOM event type may stop propagation. Great. So we need to handle this. And here we are going to return, I guess we printed this also, event.a.a also. However, this is going to have the wrong type because this is a decoder of a tuple, which has a bool in it, whereas this one's just a decoder of the message. So this should actually do something kind of weird because it's actually violating the type safety of Elm. Yeah. Oh, this wasn't quite the error I was expecting. Expected the message sample message from the event, but could not find the event. Okay, I'm not entirely sure if this error is caused by the thing I was saying about the types, but let's go ahead and fix that anyway. So this event decoder, HTML as JSON.event decoder, now should have a different type. So this takes an event handler. I'm not sure what that is, but well, it's this JavaScript object that we've been looking at. So that's fine. What we want to change this to is to be the most generic version, this custom. So we want this to have this type now. Which will lead to problems here in the Elm code, which is fine. We can fix that through. Something is off in the first branch. Ah, okay. So we need this here. And then here on line 27, what is the issue here? Node, line 27, this node call produces a node of this. Ah, okay. So node, interesting. So how do we want to handle this? I think, I'm feeling like we should pass this up a bit further. Like, I think elm-html itself in internal types should probably allow this stuff in here. Let's see, so node records has that, fax contains this. Okay, so fax is ultimately the source of messages. Events, great. Okay, so these are the events, and events now will always decode this, all this stuff. Okay, that's making sense to me. It seems like what we want also. And then internal types, line 439, event decoder. Decode event produces the wrong thing. Yeah, okay. So we have a function that does that. We want to return this entire record now. And I think we may also need to put that here. Yeah, okay. This type annotation is getting to be kind of a mess. But that's okay, we can refactor this later. All right. And internal types 441. Yeah, okay, so what is wrong here? Event decoders is also wrong. Okay, so HTML context. Where did that come from? HTML context. Yeah, okay, so this also is the same decoder type. And now, on line 203, decode elm-html Oh, got a dash? Oh yeah, and enjoy lunchtime with your daughter, or you're out east. Maybe it's dinner time. Cool. Well, thanks for stopping by. Um, these videos are up on Twitch for like 2 weeks or something if you want to catch up, but we're kind of down in the weeds, so probably once we get to more fun projects, it'll be more worth it to tune in. But see you, Arkham. Thanks for stopping by. Okay, so line 203 here, decode into an elm-html. Okay, so I think we want the same type here, and message unit stop propagation false, prevent default false. So this is an internal module that shouldn't be exposed in the public API of the test package, so I think this is fine, and I think this is the right place to keep pushing this extra information through. Because like we were saying earlier, ultimately we do want elm-html-test to be able to inspect and do things with these bools. So I feel like we may as well push that information up a bit farther through the system rather than just cutting it off right away, so it'll be easier to implement those new features later. Okay, so here on line 300, event decoder equals something result from maybe. So we get it, and then here I think is the point where, for the moment, we just want to drop the extra bools and just give the message. So at this point, we get it out of a result dictionary. So it's a maybe. So we want a maybe.map and the decoder, and then we will json.decode.map, and here we'll actually get the message, and I guess that's all we get, or that's all we want. Actually, we can just put .message as the function, and we can say note. This is where we are dropping the information about stop propagation and prevent default. In the future, we will want to expose this somehow. And I guess we can link to this issue as well. elm-html-test. Here, and options. Okay, cool. I think that closes up the loop here. And it's already imported as just as decode, it looks like. So it's suggesting those names. And let's see. Something is off with the third case expression. Okay, line 309. Event decoder. So what is wrong with those? Custom node and markdown node. The event decoder call produces a decoder. Oh, what? Produces a function? Oh. Yeah, what is in this dictionary? Facts.events is a dictionary of functions. Okay. Oops, and where is facts? Oh, no. Events should be a dictionary of decoders. If anyone's seen the mistake, feel free to point it out. So this is a dictionary. This should be a string. So we should be getting back at this point a maybe decoder. So we do the maybe map. We should get the decoder. Oh, I'm not passing the decoder to decode.map. Okay, that's the problem. Which means then, since this is the last argument, we can just curry that away. Okay. And, okay, so now it's erroring in both cases, which I believe is because we're not giving a code, the decoder is not returning the correct value. So essentially we need to call decoder, we need to call decode.map here and turn this into a record with the right type. So I don't entirely know how this works for the kernel code, but I think we just need to import json.decode. I guess we also need to put exposing map, and then we can refer to it in here. And we say JSON decode map, and the decoder is the second argument, and the first argument is a function that will take the message and return message stop propagation false and prevent default false. Okay, let's see if that makes the test for the normal handler pass. Nope. Okay, we didn't do that right. Maybe it's just JSON decode? Huh, I'm not sure how this works. I guess in the case of elm kernel JSON, let's see, how are we calling wrap? We're just calling it as JSON wrap. Okay. I need to refer to some other native code and see how this works. Okay, so here's basics. It's using identity or result. Let's look at, oh, actually here's JSON decode. So let's see how this code is calling map. It's just calling underscore JSON map. Oh, as JSON. Okay. I guess let's follow the same pattern. As JSON exposing map, then we will call underscore JSON underscore map. Okay, let's see if that works. Nope, still doesn't work. Cannot read property dollar of undefined. Yeah, I'm not sure where that's coming from. Okay, well, let's take a quick break here. I think we're probably messing some stuff up in this native code. I feel like I'm kind of blind in what I'm typing here. Not entirely sure what's going on. So maybe we can try putting some debugging in some of this, or inspecting maybe this decoder that we're trying to return and try to figure out what's going on there. I was expecting after putting this in that the first of these tests would pass. Then we should be able to apply the same pattern here, just with a slightly different map function. I guess I'm also not sure if record values are handled in the same way. So I guess we'll have to look at that. I guess it might be safer to just make this be a tuple as well. I don't know, that's stuff we can look into. But I'm going to take a quick break and be back in maybe 5 minutes. Oh, and Derby64, thanks for the follow. Welcome to the stream. Cool, so let's take a quick break and then we'll get back to this. If anyone has thoughts about progress we're making, or if you want to chat about any projects you all are working on, feel free to say so in the chat. And we will be back in just a few minutes.